Okay, so next up we have Neil Power from Monzo, whose talk's called Why Not Both?
Hiya, yeah, as Joe said, I'm Neil. I'm also one of the organisers of GDG alongside Joe. So yeah, thank you all for coming. It's awesome to turn out. We run a meetup every month, so keep an eye out on meetup pages. We do like code labs and stuff, so if you fancy learning anything, everyone's welcome. So yeah, what am I actually going to talk to you about today? First off, I thought I'd introduce myself. So I'm a mobile engineer at Monzo. So I work across both the Android and iOS apps. we do work natively, so that's Swift and Kotlin. But yeah, so in terms of like where I'm from in Liverpool, I used to work for Liverpool, which is the same as where Joe's from now. They're all agencies basically, so you've got opposing and co-producers in Manchester, if you've heard of them before. And I'll go into a little bit on how that's sort of helped being in an agency environment, learning both platforms, and having that flexibility and changing projects a lot. But I'll go into that a bit more in a minute. So, next slide. So yeah, people in general tend to go on about this whole battle between iOS and Android, and like which phone's the best, and like which iPhone's the best, and which Samsung, or which flagship, and who's got what, and it sort of seems a status symbol, which I think is fine, like if you're just a consumer and it like whatever. But I think if you're working in the mobile industry, you have a responsibility to care at least about the other platform, because as soon as you start going down one route, you end up pigeonholing your app to look more like one than the other, which is alienating potentially half of your user base or more. So it also means that if you end up caring a lot, most of the time it tends to be people care about the iOS platform, and it means that one will be a higher quality than the other. Just means that, because people do compare apps between platforms, so like, if you've got your mates out and everyone's on different platforms, if one doesn't have a feature that the other does, it just detriments your whole brand. So, in general, I tend to see it as the two platforms cooperating and communicating is a really good thing. It means that you can find out issues earlier, you can make sure that you have feature parity between the two, and it just means your users are more happy, benefit everyone. But it isn't just developers. It can be anyone in the whole company. If you're in the mobile industry, or even like sort of when you're on web, but not quite as much. But certainly as well on when you start doing cross-platform technologies, so the web-based ones, but that are apps. There can be a lot of issues with those in terms of, because you're making one UI, how do you focus it towards one or the other? Which I can speak about for weeks about the benefits of doing native development, but I won't go into that. But yeah, this is quite an interesting map. I think it's from earlier this year of which platform has the most number of users by country. So sort of the UK is sort of predicted, or basically, it's quite a lot more equal than I think a lot of people think. Especially in developing countries, Android is much more dominant because it's much more accessible. So especially if your app or like your client's app or whatever is going to be more than just in the UK, it's really important you actually consider Android as equally important. Especially now with Android devices costing as much as iPhones anyway. So on a developer front as well, these are the logos for the programming languages. So you've got Swift and Kotlin. Swift is for iOS and Kotlin is for Android. They're very similar platform languages now. It's quite nice. So if you are developing in one, it's a lot easier to actually understand the other, at least be able to read the code and get the gist of what's going on. You only really need to know the platform-specific components, or like how the camera API works, that sort of thing, which is much more Googleable than like understanding some syntax. So as an example, this is, sorry that's really small, that's just a Swift function for summing up other numbers. Pretty simple. And then the equivalent in Kotlin is, you can see it's very, very similar. There's just some different symbols in certain places. They both have functional, my brain's completely forgotten words, so you can do like map and filter, like basic functional programming features which make your life easier. So yeah, they're both very, very clean languages, so they're really nice to learn and go between the two. Yeah, these slides will be online if you're actually more interested in that code. So, talking a little bit about design stuff. So these are the iOS app, particularly on the Android ones, on the front and the back on the right, which is confusing. Something that Monzo specifically has struggled with in the past, because it started as iOS for about a year or two, I think, before Android even came onto it, is that iOS did at least have a lot more features and was much more robust. I don't know how to describe it, but just felt a bit more finished. So it's been quite interesting coming into the team and seeing how the Android team is now the same size as the iOS team. I think there's 10 or 11 of each platform now. And we tend to have, in our teams now, we'll have developers on both platforms, and we'll have channels on Slack that are just mobile in general, rather than they used to be like Android, iOS, and it meant that the developers never spoke to each other. And with that, you end up having apps that look completely different, because you might decide to make something look slightly different, or especially when you've got native components, because like the way that you pick a date in Android is going to be different to iOS, but the core look should feel similar, which I think Monzo is getting there. There's still some things that aren't quite there yet, but hopefully it's getting better. So yeah, talking about the teams a little bit, we obviously have iOS and Android as a general, like, we'll have meetings once a week to talk with each other about approaches for the apps, but in general, they still have one Android, one iOS, a designer, some back-end engineers on each. They call them the squads, but and we'll tend to, the two front-end engineers will tend to communicate quite a lot. We'll do documents mapping out a whole feature before we actually start it to ensure that the approaches are the same. Designs are done for both, which is really cool. I found in the past the designers will tend to have a preference for iOS, which I think is getting better as Android phones are getting better. There's more quality in that, which is really cool. But yeah, in general, Monzo's plan for the future is to have more people who can do both, or at least have an understanding of both. So you can have teams where you might have two front-end engineers, but both of them can do Android and iOS, and it means that you have even more coherence between the platforms. And the squads are done on features, so we have squads on lending, growth, what are the ones like main accounting, stuff like that. So it's all fairly insular, the different feature teams. So I've spoken a lot about how it benefits the company and how it might benefit your product. I've had it benefit like you if you're a developer or a designer, or like, to be honest, anyone if you're working in the mobile industry. How can it help to have that more broad a look? And for me personally, so I've always done both. I started straight out of uni learning both at the same time. I think that sort of helps. I think once you're specialised in one, it's quite difficult to then get as good at the other. But I think there are some real benefits to at least playing around, try reviewing some of the other platforms' pull requests, or like pairing with some of the other platforms' developers. If you're a designer, try out doing your designs for like 2 weeks on the other platform first, rather than like if you did iOS or Android first, to see what differences there are. I think that could produce some quite interesting results. It also means that in meetings you understand more than 50% of it, which is always a win. And you can attend more and have more of an impact on your team. It means you know more people, so that's always good. So yeah, sorry if I sort of rambled on that. I've sort of been throwing this together over the last few days. So yeah, in conclusion, if you're a mobile developer already, try it. Try out another platform if you're interested in learning it. Try out learning Kotlin and Swift, see which one you prefer. There are also a lot of cross-platform technologies that you can try out that are really good. Flutter in particular is quite good, which is one from Google, which is quite an easy one to understand. But yeah, if anyone has any questions about like generally doing cross-platform work, just feel free to ask. Shameless plug, by the way, Monzo are actually hiring. I've been told to put this one in. As I mentioned, so I work remotely from up here in the north. I just have to go down to London every now and then. We're hiring for quite a lot of stuff, so Android, iOS, engineering managers, everything really. So yeah, take a stab and apply if you fancy, or feel free to ask me a question if you are interested. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, so next up we have Giles from Invika, and the talk is called If Not Us, Then Who?
creative director in Beacon. We specialise in software development and recently extended into very much more user-centric based stuff. We've got offices in London, Liverpool, Sheffield, Leeds, Manchester, Hungary, Germany, got a few places, and we are hiring back in front-end boots. So I'm here today to talk about effectively safety online. I'm obsessed by people. I love people. I think people are great. I think we should all be happy. We should all have great things going on in our lives. We should have a smile. We should all dominate our lives. And it upsets me when things don't go so well. When I hear about friends, I hear about things being used. Can be technology race, can be anything. Obviously, like the cries that the relationship between CPU and R2D2, for God's sake, you know? That's what I'm like. And since I've been doing this job from a user strategy point of view, it makes me sad to think that some people have become vulnerable online. But what I want to do to begin with is I want to say to all you are here today, we are all incredible people. We are amazing. Tell you why we're amazing. We're amazing because we're all superhumans. We're all superheroes. Because we've created this wonderful thing out of nothing. The internet. It's amazing what we can do with the internet. Financial, we can build cities, we can do anything. Absolutely anything. We can reach people across the other side of the world. We can build companies. And we should all give ourselves a damn good pat on the back for that. Because it's incredible. We've done absolutely nothing at all. We keep going, we keep pushing it forward. It's cuddly. It's fun. It's nice. We love it. It's a bit cheeky. We can all share jokes. We can all buy things. We know Black Friday. Well, it's good fun. You know, it's a laugh. But also, unfortunately, it's got its dark side. And it's got its dark side because it's in its infancy. And it's in its infancy, and we haven't built this thing with regulation, with legislation. We're constantly playing catch up. And because of that, what we're getting now is we're getting things like religious extremism. We're getting things like fake news. You're getting things like child porn. All these things are happening out there. And we have not built systems in place to deal with these, and we're playing catch up. And because of that, we've created this. I'm at the age now, I've got two little kids, I've got a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old girl. I'm sure a lot of you maybe have kids or you may settle down, that sort of thing. But we are now in a position where we are the people in control of this thing. And we have to look to how we can control it, how we can look after it, how we can protect future generations. Because if it's not us, then who's going to do this? Sales guys, they're going to toss, they're going to be selling things, they're going to get projects sold. Some project managers want to get projects put through. Some universities, me included, want to provide the best way to convert someone from A to Z. And yeah, sure, we go through our various strategies, but we forget, effectively, as a society, across the world, we're people that care, we care of each other, we always have cared of each other. Since we were cavemen, you know, we learned to look after each other in groups. If not, we'd been picked off by dinosaurs a long, long time ago. We learned to survive as pods, take care of ourselves. And that's something we have to do. You look at things like engineering, for example. Let's think about industries we've been around for a long time. Road safety, let's say. Child car seats. If you build a stadium somewhere in a big city, you have to engineer the roads to make sure that actually it's going to happen. You won't get rid of traffic. There will be too many. You have to look at how pedestrians go manage this. You start to look at not just building the actual model, what effect that will have in worst case scenarios. We don't tend to do that. We tend to look at user journeys. Let's make this go by as much as possible we can online within years and clicks, that sort of thing. Oh, we're spotting networks on the mobile. Let's do that. That's what we do. That's fine. But that's what's ended up with the beach we've got. Little known fact: when they did Central Park, built it, designed it, and they actually planted a lot of shrubs that were actually not large enough for people to hide behind and jump out and knock people, because they thought about future-proofing side of things. And that's quite an interesting fact. I think it's something we need to hold on to that fact in this talk in particular. It's one of my favourite slides I saw a while back. We had the whole refugee crisis a while back, you might remember that. The point I'm making here is that we're all in the same boat. In this occasion, not. But we basically are. And we have to remember that we're dealing with people, not necessarily users, and that's the key thing. We're dealing with people. These people are not just user journeys, user personas, that sort of thing, but actually people who have things to affect themselves. Let me introduce you to Robert. I know these people. The two profiles I'm going to give you now, I do know them, but I've disguised their identities. Robert, how would I do this on a website? User persona. Robert, 78 years old, 4 kids, all gone to university, all happy, just retired, does a bit of part-time work, owns his own house, married for 50 years, got a few Labradors, lovely. Life is good. He wants to get into tech. He wants to keep up to date. Family money abroad, that sort of thing. That sounds fine. There's the user journey. Well, let's plot something for Robert now. Let's plot how he can use things. He might have problems with his eyes and all that. But here's what we do. All like this. Robert's wife got dementia. Ended up in a home. Rob's lonely. Feels a burden on his family. He doesn't necessarily know who to turn to, what to do. The apps he used to use to manage his finances, for example, Santander, let's say, in a fit of despair, he was doing some banking, made a mistake. Rob running over his bank, gave him the details, lost £700 in savings. These are the sort of things that we're not thinking about. We're not thinking about that we are dealing with humans, not just users. And that's the key thing. We've got to start thinking about, well, how can people manipulate the things we're designing? Because if not, it's not just Robert, it's going to be our future generation, our kids. There's going to be a lot of people getting affected by this. I took another night, another person I knew, Thomas. Thomas, 34 years old, ran his own agency abroad, doing very well. Married to Elizabeth for 6 years. Happy, 2 kids, swimming pool, farmhouse, tech savvy. Robert and Elizabeth's marriage split up. He had to sell up. Moved home, financially ruined. Sleep on friends' sofas. He's embarrassed, he's now doing a job that he used to pay people to do. He tried to get back on his feet. Tom said if enough money for a deposit on Rob's rental, he was scammed by a rental website and lost his £400. These are things that we have to safeguard against. How do we do this? Well, it's not tricky. We're all people. We're supposed to think. Thinking has separated us from many species on the planet. It's brought us the arts, it's brought us science. We just think a little bit more from the word go. All of us here today, in 20 years' time, hopefully we've built an internet that's more like TED and less like Big Angry Bear. I was in my last slide, but I was looking at this the other day and I came across something. How do you actually do this? I think it's good, but it's a bit, it's a bit of a call to action. How do you actually do that? I was on Facebook yesterday and that actually. I'll share this with you. And it's kind of summed up a little bit. If you ever find yourself dialing 999, you can't speak, press 55. They can track you from wherever you're dialing location. New technology passing on may save a life. I think very good. This person here, Nico, you realise you could probably be helping the person get killed, not save a life, because they are going to waste time trying to do these bullshit things like asking for pizza and dialing certain numbers, which is all bullshit. Why do people make this shit up? Fair enough. And I thought to myself, well, that's a nonsense. What they're talking about. But I thought, actually, maybe this person here is tapping into stuff that we might not have thought about. Maybe they might. Maybe I'm going to have pizza and make some shit up. Someone goes, this is true! It's the people having heart attacks and other issues that are unable to speak because they're conscious, says Gemma Luckhurst. Let's jump in defence of ABM. Which was met with, Gemma Luckhurst, it's not true, you fucking dimwit. Thank you, Christopher Taylor. Point I'm making is, I hate social, I hate Facebook, quite frankly, but I trawl through it now and again because I've got friends on it and that sort of thing, you want to see how the kids are doing and whatnot. The point I'm making is that maybe there's already that hook out there. This is a little throwaway line actually, because I haven't got a point, I haven't got an answer, I'm not going to give an answer in 10 minutes. The idea is to get you guys to think about this. Maybe it's something out there already. Maybe we just chuck bullshit out on social internet and let people just fight and we can find some answers. You know, I don't know what. Oops, sorry, Dave, I beg your pardon me. I don't know what people still want up, which you might point, or we know. Someone might guess, but what bollocks! They launched this. 10 weeks down the line, someone dies and someone died of pizza because the ambulance has gone there and I'm gone there. Who knows? But maybe the answer is out there. Maybe we just chuck it on social media and everyone argue about it. Who knows? But the point I'm making is, let's think about it. Someone's got to sort it out. Because if it's not, that's the thing, is it? Thank you.
So next up we have Dave Martin. Dave Martin's from Funding Circle. He's talking about Datomic.
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 That's it.
Which is an immutable database.
Right. Hi everyone. My name is Dave Martin. I'm a closure developer at Funding Circle, and I just thought I'd give a short talk about Datomic, which is a functional immutable database. It was created by a company called Cognitect in 2012. I'd just like to say that I'm not affiliated with Cognitect at all. I have no stake in Datomic. I just think it's a fantastic database, and I thought I'd share it with you guys. So, there are lots of types of database out there. Like, there's loads of different SQL databases, loads of different NoSQL databases, time series, graph databases, all sorts now. So, like, why should you care about Datomic? Like, what makes it different? What does it give you that other databases won't? So, just start off by saying, let's just start off by talking about what is Datomic. So, at its core, Datomic is a database based around storing facts. So, a fact in this case is basically something that you know at a point in time. And these facts are immutable. Like, they never ever change. So, for example, like, I could store in Datomic the fact that today my name is Dave, and that's never ever going to change. Like, I might change my name, I could call myself Helen in a year's time or something, but but the fact remains that at this point in time, my name is Dave. I might supplant that with another fact in a year's time, but that fact itself is immutable. And that's really the core of Datomic. Datomic's also fully transactional. It gives you all the ACID guarantees, the same kind of consistency guarantees that SQL will give you. And that's very important for a database. And somewhat uniquely, it also has separate read and write APIs. So, how in SQL you want to read something, you send an SQL query to the server, get some results back, and kind of the same thing when you want to update something, when you want to perform a transaction, you send an update query. So Datomic actually has two quite separate ways of reading and writing. So writes all go through a single process, a single threaded process called the transactor. So that ensures that writes are ordered properly, but reads are done, like queries, they're done within your application process itself. So that enables you to scale very well. Or scale reads at least. So I'm just going to cover some of what I think are the biggest advantages of Datomic. I'm not going to go too much into the technical side of it as much as possible. So number one, time travel. So because everything in Datomic is immutable, you can hack time. So say if you want to query your database as it was 6 months ago, you can do that. So what you do is basically within Datomic, you tell it to forget about any facts that it registered after 6 months ago, and then run the query on that. You can also do what's kind of the reverse of that. You can ask it what has changed since a certain point in time, like what's changed in the past week, say. And you can also run kind of arbitrary queries involving time. So if you're storing like some users in the database, you might want to ask it like give me a list of the user's email addresses as of the time of their last purchase. You might want to know that, and you can do that with Datomic. That's pretty cool, in my opinion. But yeah, it sounds, well, I hope it sounds cool to some people, but yeah, I mean, but that's all well and good. But you can't go to your manager and say like, oh, this sounds cool, let's use it. You've got to have some like concrete use cases and benefits for it. So, like, has anyone here like encountered something similar to this? Like, for example, you've got some query that runs on your back end that it works most of the time, but sometimes it, say like first thing Monday morning, it doesn't work for some reason. But when you come to look at it, the query is running fine, and you can't tell why it was broken. Or perhaps you've got a query or a report that, and somebody's asking you like why the result changed, like why is it different today than it was yesterday? Or perhaps you're trying to recreate a query result from like months or years ago. And all these problems are, in general, they're often solvable using normal like SQL and NoSQL databases, but they can be very difficult. Like sometimes you have to go and grep through the logs, or perhaps try and find a backup of the database from 6 months ago and use that. And try and like piece together what happened. But with Datomic, these problems all become quite trivial. And that's because it's because of quite fundamental reasons. Because with most databases, things change in place. But because that doesn't happen in Datomic, because everything's immutable, you can just go back in time, and these problems become trivial. So another advantage is that it gives you a very flexible way to model your data. So as I said, everything in Datomic is based on facts. Those facts are represented as something called datums. So a datum is very simple. It's just made up of 4 different things. There's an entity ID, so kind of what it's a fact about. Similar to kind of like a primary key in SQL. There's the attribute, similar to the column in SQL. That might be like, person name or customer reference number. There's the value, the actual value of the fact, and the transaction, the point at which you added the fact into the database. And yeah, so you can kind of compose multiple datums into an entity. So I have like a user entity that has like a first name, last name, email address, etc. And datums can also reference entities, so in that way you can link entities together in one-to-one or one-to-many relationships. And that's kind of, it gives you the equivalent of like left joins in SQL. But this is actually a very flexible way of modeling data, and it's because it's much more granular than SQL. Like in SQL, the smallest level of granularity we have is really the table. And I don't know if anyone's run into a problem like this before, where you might have customers, users, employees, and they're all separate. But then, what do you have when you have a user who is a customer? You have to, you might have to create like an abstract table, stuff like that. Becomes very difficult at that point. But with Datomic, you can mix and match which attributes, like which facts you know about an entity. Yeah, so I've found that helps very much with data modeling. So another advantage, in my opinion, is that Datomic doesn't actually use the SQL query language. It uses a different one called Datalog. Now, Datalog is declarative like SQL, but it's also logic-based, similar to Prolog, if anyone's used that. So that has a few advantages, in my opinion. The first one is so an SQL query is just a string, really. It's designed for humans to input into a computer. It's not designed for machines to read. But Datalog queries are themselves data structures. There's one down at the bottom there. It looks a bit scary at first. Yeah, so they're data structures, so you can more easily manipulate them, and machines can understand them much better. You also have what's called rules. So these are roughly analogous to functions in an SQL database, but you pass rules as part of the query. They don't live on the database itself, so that means you can compose them and reuse them much more easily in your code. It also has the advantage that, partly because it's logic-based, recursive queries become much more easy. They are. You can do them in SQL and other NoSQL databases, but it's quite difficult. And one more advantage is you can use arbitrary functions from your code in your query. This is because of the separate read and write APIs. And because queries are done within your application process, you can use functions from your code. So, for example, if you've written a function that, say, calculates business days between two dates, and you want to use that in a query, you don't have to translate it to SQL and then run that query. You can just put it in the query directly, which is a big advantage in my opinion. So, yeah, Datomic does give you a lot more stuff that I can't really cover right now, but yeah, just quickly skim through them. As I said, because of the separate read and write APIs, you get very, very easy horizontal read scalability. You just spin up more application instances. There's very pervasive caching. Because everything is immutable, you never need to invalidate the cache. So you can do a lot of caching at the database level itself. You're also guaranteed consistent results across queries. Because the way you query is you graph the database at a point in time. So no matter how long you wait in between consecutive queries, the results will always be consistent because you're asking the database at a specific point in time, which can't change. Also, transactions are first class. So transactions are themselves entities within the database. So you can do stuff like add a user ID to a transaction to see who caused it. And then you can query that as well. And finally, it also has a feature called speculative writes, where you can basically fork the database and then run transactions on it, like add some data in, and then run a query on that forked database, completely in memory. And you're basically asking Datomic, what would the results of my query be if the data was like this? And that's very, very useful for testing. Yeah, so that's it from me. There's some more links if anyone's interested in learning more, or come and ask me about it. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Dave. Next up, we have Richard, who is from Uniform, and the talk's called A Future Agency? The Future Agency.
Hello, yeah, I'm Richard, I'm from Uniform, and we do all sorts of different kinds of projects. I don't know how much you know about us, but I'm here to talk about the Future Agency, and this is probably one of the most exciting, interesting projects that I've ever been involved in. And it all started because it was Uniform's 20th birthday, and as many people look backwards at a time like that, we wanted to look forwards and imagine what might be happening in the future, and the future that we might face. So what we did was create this full agency, look at the jetpacks that we were promised and the mind control we weren't. So it spans from kind of the amazing things that we can't wait for to the terrifying things that we hope never happen. And within this agency there's 75 different stories, there's new job roles, there's different bits of technology, tools and toys that we're all going to be using in the future. So it was a lot of fun to kind of put together, but you might be asking, why did you do it? And we did it because it's so easy to get stuck into the day-to-day and look at what's right in front of you and the projects that you're working on right now. But it's so important to think about the future and where we're headed, because as soon as you start thinking about that, you can start thinking about the steps that you can take to get there. And so many companies don't look at what's happening around them, don't look at the new opportunities that there are to take. And when you don't do that, you quickly become irrelevant and you're not taking opportunities. So by doing this, we was able to kind of think up some absolutely ridiculous things that at first glance you just think, that's never going to happen. But as soon as we got it down, we started thinking, alright, so what are the logical steps that we can now take to actually turn this into a reality, or to avoid the things that we absolutely don't want to see happening. So the beginnings of all of this was us pulling together a few key themes, and there's many of them that all dip into different stories within the agency. But a few of them to mention is, first one being automation. And automation is absolutely going to change our industry, and it's really easy to turn up our noses at things like Squarespace and AutoDraw, but these things are just going to get better and better. People are using them, and we need to kind of find ways to be able to elevate our roles within the industry so we can get automation to either do the nitty-gritty stuff that we don't want to be doing, or do the things that's totally outside of human capabilities. Like I know Toyota or Honda are starting to design cars through like automatic technology and artificial intelligence, and it's just producing this mind-blowing stuff that you can't believe is possible. Another one's augmentation, and this is just like augmented reality at the minute is absolutely in its infancy, but you're already seeing like surgeons use this to start planning operations, make things work better, and this is going to be where reality and digital really start coming together, so it's absolutely inevitable. And whilst it's pretty infant right now, the sooner that we can get to grips with it, start exploring it, think about the things that it could achieve, the more prepared we'll be when the technology gets better. Another one is around covalence, and we kind of look into a lot of big overarching themes, and this is a lot to do with kind of privacy issues. Obviously you've got all these kind of seemingly shady, mysterious companies that are taking your information, you don't quite know what they're doing with it. And what we need to kind of get to is a point where we're empowering people to kind of take control of their information. If they want to share it, they can share it. If they don't, they don't, but they always know what's being taken, when and how it's being used. And this is one of the themes where it seems like a big topic and like you think, how the hell do we solve that? But we're starting to prototype something already that really gives power back to people. And that's going to be launched in a month or so. And another one that this kind of bridges two different things that we're thinking about, and it's been touched on quite a lot today, and this is the human side. Like, big data is obviously massive, very informative, but we've got to bridge that with empathy and talking to people, understanding people. And it also comes down to, at the minute, all interactions are kind of tracked in terms of like clicks, likes, dwell time, and bits like that, and it's in the future. Like, imagine, would we be tracking how many smiles we get, how many laughs we get, and it's just kind of like, this is where it starts getting a little bit terrifying again. But it's kind of really interesting to think about how these things could happen and how we might get there. So this is just like, So what we did is take this world and then create an augmented reality app. So you can go into this, you can explore the building, go in, see the people, see the tech, have little demos and see what's about to happen, and we want to get people's feedback on this, because with some of the bigger topics, some of the terrifying things, some of the exciting things, we're letting people vote on it and tell us what they think, because that can help us start steering our thinking, because some things that I thought people would think was terrifying, people are quite liking and people are quite ready and open to seemingly. And this is just a little video that gives you a little bit of a snippet of this project.
Kathleen? No?
Hopefully in the future I'll know how to use a laptop.
Sorry. So it's up there, it's over there, somewhere. I can't see it. Eve, where is it?
On the left, so the left. Here.
Yeah, it is.
Here's the clipboard, it's not on the side.
So I didn't mean to bring some posters today, but I totally forgot. But if you are interested, definitely go on there and let us know what you think. And this is kind of, I'm going to choose again now.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
not on a different screen. So yeah, if we go right, this way. Yeah, there we go.
But this is just the beginning. So like this was our big launch of it. This is something that we wanted to be really fun and interactive and speak to a big group of people. Whereas now what we're really looking to do is start focusing in to different areas. So like what are the channels that we're going to be using in the future? How do we tackle some of the issues that we're looking at? So we really want to be working with lots of different people with different interests, different perspectives on what this could look like and how we can move this forward. Like I say, we're doing quite a lot internally, but we definitely want to try and spread out this conversation as far as we can. But yeah, if you want to know anything else, come and have a little chat. And thank you very much.
So next up we have the last talk of the night, guys. I'm sad too. James Halsall from Mvika. We're talking about short-circuiting your feedback loops.
Hi everyone, that's already the last talk of the night. And I'm here to talk about feedback loops and how we can short circuit these feedback loops and become more productive. Quick introduction, I'm James. I've been working about 10 years as a programmer and a technical team lead at Mvika. As Giles said, we've got offices all over the country, all over Europe, and we're hiring right now. And I work primarily with PHP and Go. And I really love to think about continuous improvement within the teams that I work. I'm just going to start with a pretty quick story about when I was travelling for work recently. I was going through Manchester Airport and I saw one of these boxes and I come through security. I don't know if anyone's seen these before, but basically it allows companies to get feedback instantly from the interaction you just had with the product or the business. So I was thinking, the culture we live in as well now, where everything is instant, we want everything right now. I thought feedback's no different. I thought, how can we take this way of thinking and apply it to how we work day to day? And a feedback loop is just something that a phrase that I use, I don't know if it's the right phrase, it's just the way I think about it. It's basically the time it takes for you to get some feedback from something that you have done. And this can be anything. It can be programming, it can be design, it can be UX, work, anything. It can be non-technical related as well. And generally, when the loop time is long, it actually costs not only your client, your customer, more money, it costs you more time as well. I mean, it introduces more context switching, and it's much more difficult to action feedback. So generally, naturally, shorter is better. And if you get the feedback quicker, you have more context to actually do something with it. And a good way of thinking about this is if you find a bug while you're working in development, how cheap is it to fix that bug there and then, rather than finding the same bug in production 1, 2, 3 weeks later? If you find it in development, you're actually cutting out all of those intermediate steps, and it's obviously much cheaper to remedy. So let's have a look at some examples of things that we've done in the teams at Vika. We haven't done them all. In some teams, some don't work, but these are different things that we put into practice. I'm going to start with code review, because code review is quite a common thing that most developers do, I would hope. People work in their teams, certainly. But generally what happens, or at least what I find happens, is you push your code, and you'll move the ticket along on your Kanban board, or you'll ping someone on Slack, and you get them to review it when they can. But by the time they come on to review it, you've actually moved on to something else. You've picked up the next ticket, or you're reading some of the documentation. And then they give you feedback, and then you need to go back to the ticket, and you can see now that that's quite a relatively long feedback loop for you to get some information or some feedback from your colleagues. So we can actually improve this massively by pair programming, and not just pair programming occasionally, pair programming as a norm. And this is something I like to push in the teams that I work in, because not only does pair programming lead to better quality and reduce time to actually deliver the work, you're actually getting this feedback dynamically. So as I'm working with, say, Jack, who's in the crowd, we're feeding off each other, and we're giving each other feedback on our solution as we work. And sticking with the same vein as developers, if you have a build server where your tests are running, this is great. You know something's failed before the code gets merged into your stable branch. But again, the problem is that usually if you push your work and you make a 15-minute, 20-minute build, or however long that takes, you'll generally just pick up the next ticket, or you'll start reading about something else. And if you have a failed build because your tests are broken, you've got to go back to it. And again, that's wasted time. So what we can do is have your tests run automatically before you even push your code. You can use hooks in Git, or even Mercurial if you use Mercurial. And you have these hooks that run before you push, which allows you to commit early and often and doesn't interrupt your workflow. It's just at the point you're saying, hey, I'm finished now, I'm going to push my code. And it actually means your build server isn't spending time running builds which you know would fail. So it's bringing that process earlier into the cycle and finding out as quick as possible, does my solution actually work? What about QA and UAT as well? If you've got QA analysts in your team, and you do your work, and he or she has got loads of tickets to get through to QA, and it can actually be days sometimes before your work goes from code review and then into QA and is actually being QA'd and tested. And by that time, obviously, we're on something else now. We may have done 2 or 3 more tickets in that time. And it's context switching. We hate that as developers. Going back to work we've already done and having to fix something, and there's a lot of overhead in moving things on the board or adding new tasks, it's a real pain. So what we do in Vika is we have on-site customers. Now we don't actually have them on-site with us because we have remotely located teams. But the agile term, the on-site customer, just means that the customer is part of the team. The customer, as in the product owner, sorry, can work with you, is available full-time to work with you on things. And also with QA, you can actually pair with them, just like you pair with a developer, and ask them questions or QA something with the QA analyst as well. So when they're testing something and it fails, you can quickly see why. And you can bounce off each other, and it's the same with the product owner as well. You can even bring the product owner in earlier and say, well, I've been working on this and I'm not quite sure how this should work. So you can just Skype them, Slack them, show them how it's working, and they can give you that information there and then, rather than you taking a guess, getting it into the UAT phase, and then they're like, no, this is wrong. And again, it's wasted time. And we're trying to get the feedback as early as possible. Something non-programming related, something that I'm sure most of us do, or a lot of us do, is giving feedback for our colleagues when it comes around to appraisals, and you get asked, how did you find working with Giles this year? Okay. That's what he's doing. Yeah, you actually don't think back further than like 1 to 2, maybe 3 months. I certainly don't. I can't remember what happened last week, let alone 11 or 12 months ago. So a better way of doing this is actually make it possible to give feedback on any of your staff, or sorry, any of your colleagues at any time, anywhere. Make it really easy, and make it fast to do. So I don't want to spend time filling out 6 different boxes on a form for Giles' feedback. It's going to take too much of my time. And not only that, if I'm giving feedback on Giles instantly, and he's getting that feedback, then he can actually do something about it. He can think, oh yeah, I know why that happened, I can do this. Or, oh yeah, I did do a good job on that on the occasions. So, hopefully that's illustrated what I mean by feedback loops and short-circuiting them, and hopefully you can find some opportunities in your processes to short-circuit some feedback loops. Thank you.
Alright, so thanks to everyone for coming tonight. I understand we are running slightly behind schedule. I think we were meant to have finished already. But I hope everyone's had a great time. Thank you to all of our speakers who've all done a great job. So can we have a round of applause for the speakers? I think the plan is that we're going to go for a drink now, but I've never been to this part of town before, so I don't know anywhere to go. Sometimes it's really small, sometimes it's really, really effective.
You can choose like what risk fund you want to invest in. Being risky businesses, you get a really high return or really safe ones.
Like how you should think about